Welcome back to those of you who followed the extraordinary keynote speech that started our day, and hello to everyone who's joining us for the first time. Thank you for making the effort to follow the proceedings. Over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be considering translating for online interaction, understanding and supporting the user experience. Now, I'm sure you've all interacted online in your own language, and so you know it's much more pleasant, more secure, especially if you're going to be purchasing something. And as we heard from Commissioner Hahn yesterday, our mother tongue speaks to our heart as well as our head. This morning, our speakers are going to illustrate some of the specific challenges that come with communication on digital platforms and with online communication more generally. How do digital platforms handle their translation needs? What does translation add to the user experience? And what if no translation is available? I'm going to explain how the session is going to work in a moment, but to see who's joining us, I want to introduce our panelists to see who are going to be exploring these questions with us. So please say hello when I introduce you. First, we have Mercedes Krimmer, who is Localization Program Manager at Facebook. She leads internationalization for some of the social media platform's largest core product initiatives, including groups, news, and profile. She speaks English and German, and while she's usually based in New York, this morning she's logging in from Puerto Rico. What time is it there, Mercedes?
It's 6 a.m.
Nice and early. Say hello to everyone.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Brilliant, thank you. And we also have her colleague, Camilla Logan, with us too. She's Senior UX Researcher at Facebook, which I understand is something like a data scientist. She investigates people's needs to ensure that products are relevant, useful, and as inclusive as possible. She knows 6 languages: English, French, Spanish, Italian, Farsi, and Lingala. Today, she's logging in from Denver in Colorado instead of her usual base in New York. Camilla, same question. What time is it there?
It's 3 o'clock in the morning for me.
Gosh, you're looking remarkably fresh, considering it's that. Maybe you never went to bed, I don't know. Thank you for making the effort to join us at that ridiculous hour in the morning. Next, we have with us Emmanuelle DUMAS, who is Language Solutions Manager in the content agency at Booking.com. Before that, she worked as a localization professional for global leaders in the translation industry, including SDL and Lionbridge. She knows 4 languages: Dutch, French, English, and Spanish, and she's joining us today from Amsterdam.
Good morning for me. Good morning. Hi, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you. Then we have Jessica SEIP. She is Head of Communication and Campaigns at the German-based operation openPetition. It is an online platform for petitions and initiatives aiming to strengthen civic participation across the whole of Europe. She speaks German, English, Spanish, and wait for it, Latin, which I've discovered could be useful if you want to get money out of the cash machine in Vatican City, which offers a language option in Latin. Jessica today is logging in from Berlin.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me.
And our final speaker is Toni, founding member of Wikimedia Community Malta, a user group that is affiliated to the Wikimedia Foundation, providing content in Maltese. And here's a fun fact about Maltese. It was only codified and recognized as an official language in 1934, even though it's been used, obviously, for centuries. Toni is a director of the Digital Curation Lab at Media City UK with the University of Salford's School of Arts and Media. He speaks 5 languages: Maltese, English, Italian, Spanish, and German, and he's joining us from his base in Manchester, UK.
Good morning, everyone.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And you see everyone, and I'm now going to explain how this session is going to work. We're going to have a presentation from each speaker, and then we're going to take questions directly for that speaker after they've finished. So please do make sure that you send your questions in early, also to give other people time to vote on them as well, because we'll be doing the most popular questions. And this way we hope to get interaction going throughout the session. So let's start our explanation of translating for online interaction by hearing from our representatives from Facebook, Mercedes Krimmer and Camilla Logan. They're going to tell us how the social media platform conducts user research and testing to make sure that translations are right, even to the point of involving translators in focus group research. Mercedes Krimmer, it's over to you to tell us more.
Hi, thank you, Aminda. So the name of our presentation is Local Design on a Global Scale, How Language Can Inform Human-Centered Design, and it'll be from me and Camilla. So hello, good morning. My name is Mercedes, and I'm a localization program manager at Facebook.
And hi, everyone, again. My name is Camilla. I'm a senior qualitative UX researcher, more specifically a researcher specializing in cultural anthropology at Facebook.
And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about content testing.
We're here today to empower members of the translation community to use this research method in their processes. Why? It helps deepen understanding of how content drives a user's experience. It uncovers detailed insights on content comprehension, tone and voice, discoverability, and cultural appropriateness. And it helps establish a solid cross-cultural communication strategy for your products. So today we'll walk you through 2 content testing methods that we routinely use in our development of our product language strategies.
And each of us also has our own personal reasons for why we find this content testing work to be particularly relevant.
So I grew up in a household where 3 languages were spoken, so I was regularly seeing firsthand how even misalignments in tone and cultural expectations can really impact language comprehension from a young age. And these experiences motivated me to study foreign languages and cultural anthropology through the doctoral level, and it also informed my specialization in cross-cultural communication as a qualitative researcher at Facebook.
And this is my first role in the localization industry, but I've worked in other product development roles at Facebook. And I worked with Camilla on a lot of user research previously and wanted to carry this over to the translation world to see how we could continue to use human-centered design. So first, what is content testing? It's a UX method that helps identify the form and mode of a conversation across a specific user journey. So at Facebook, we obviously deal with translations at huge scale, but for our elections products, we needed to have a more bespoke approach to translations. These products are only live for a few weeks at a time, so we can't really traditionally A/B test like we usually would. We need to get the translations right from the get-go. So this is really making sure that we can design starting with the users and not from a US Western-centric perspective.
And what does content really help us do? Content testing helps us dig into a few key elements of the conversation that we're trying to drive with our users. So first, it helps us with getting clarity of the message. Which words do our users expect us to be using in a discussion around a particular topic like elections? It helps us with tone and style. Which tone do users envision us using when we're speaking with them? Emotion. Which emotions does our content evoke in our users when they're encountering it? As well as cultural nuances. What are things that we should definitely know when speaking about a particular topic in this cultural context?
And who is content testing for? This is really for anyone working in the localization industry. You can conduct content testing on your own or in collaboration with your cross-functional partners. For example, user research, content design, or copywriting.
And content testing can uncover different insights at different moments across a product cycle. So for example, early on, when it helps us determine the holistic conversation we're seeking to design, in the middle of the designing an experience where it can help us understand which words are sticking or are confusing our users, and also after we've reached some sense of completion in our design, where it can help us with seeing whether the words we've landed on are accurately meeting our communication goals.
So the first method of content testing that we'll talk to you about today is called the highlighting method. So the way this works is during your user research session, you have one translated string that you've printed out on a piece of paper that you hand to participants. Make sure you give them some markers or some highlighters or something else to mark up the page. You can ask them to highlight words or phrases they found useful in green, for example, maybe something that's confusing in red. And at Facebook, obviously, we use Facebook Blue to see if it's an appropriate language tone for how they would expect Facebook to address them on the platform. You're going to start by asking them to read what's on the paper out loud, and then you'll ask them to go through and highlight certain words. So this is really based on what you're trying to learn. Are you trying to uncover more about tone, word choice, maybe the imperative or interrogative form? And at a basic level, does the translation make sense or does it confuse? Here you'll see a real-world example, and this was before the Brazilian election, the most recent one. And so this was a piece of paper with the strings that we were trying to test that we'd handed to our research participants. You can see how the participant underlined some things that didn't go well, used some X's in red. And then you can see at the bottom that we usually ask them to rewrite the translation in the way that they would have rewritten it, which allows us to continue to uncover more effective translations that maybe we didn't even think of. And then here you can see that this user completely changed the way that we had initially written the string. And this is probably because Brazil has mandatory voting. So our initial string of "have you already voted," we ended up changing to "have you already participated," because an overwhelming number of participants found that to be more useful. So at a high level, highlighting can be used to learn about comprehension and tone. You can learn a lot through what participants are saying and also what they're marking down on the piece of paper.
It's also ideal for testing content independent of your design. And this can help you get a more holistic view of how participants are understanding the content on its own when they're looking at it free from distractions of the design mocks. And it also can provide your participants more space for when it is that you're encouraging them to share their own thoughts of how it is that they might re-articulate that same message.
It's also ideal for testing only one content string at a time. So if you have only one string in mind, that's great. You can start there and then iterate from there. And this really allows you to get more focused attention so you can really go in depth.
And finally, highlighting is ideal for testing across linguistic and literacy levels. So even if your participants are struggling to articulate why it is that they don't understand something, you'll be able to see patterns in where the communication is actually breaking down based on where they're physically marking up the page. And that will really help your team when you're going back to identify where it is that you need to work further. And here we have a product example from the Indian election. Highlighting played an integral role in our product development process for India's 2019 Lok Sabha election. This is a screenshot of our Candidate Connect product. So what this product was is it allows users to get to know the candidates through a series of short videos that the candidates record themselves. And the candidates talk about where they stand on certain platform issues that they're running on. So here we focused on the header language, which here was Meet the Candidates. So the header language is really important because it sets the tone for the entire product experience. And content testing typically works really well for places where you're asking users to either take an action or where you're introducing them to the product. Buttons are another really successful way to conduct content testing. And India was a particularly strong candidate for us to do this user research because it has a unique language use on Facebook. The majority of Indian Facebook users do use Facebook in English instead of Hindi or another local language. And now we'll switch the video over to you, Camilla. Thanks, Mercedes. So what exactly did we do here with this highlighting exercise for the Candidate Connect product? We met with 50 individuals across 2 cities in India, in Chandigarh and Chennai, and we held one-on-one sessions with each of these participants where we presented them with 4 text-only variants of the product header to get a deeper understanding of comprehension, suitability, and tone. And these varied in their use of narrative, tone, length, and formality, and were presented in three widely used languages in those regions of India, so English, Hindi, and Tamil. Half of our overall participants were reviewing these variants in English, and then half of the participants in Chennai were reviewing Tamil translations of these variants, and half of the participants in Chandigarh were reviewing Hindi translations of these variants. And we asked participants to highlight content that they found confusing, pleasing, and that felt appropriate for Facebook to use. Then we asked them to put these same phrases in their own words. And after conducting these sessions, we then analyzed, synthesized, and coded these highlighted sheets for thematic findings.
And findings from surveys we ran on the platform following the election determined how successful content testing was for us in this product launch. So we created a more knowledgeable Indian electorate. We increased the Indian Facebook population's feeling that the election was important. We showed people that videos from candidates are a helpful way to prepare for an election. And we also surpassed our goal of visits to the Candidate Connect product by 9 times.
Had we not done this highlighting exercise, our team would have never learned the following important points of how we should discuss elections with our Indian users. First, personalization is key. Our participants always were gravitating towards the variants that we presented to them that contained some element of personalization. And they would always write their own names in when we'd ask them to rewrite the content on their own. Second, short videos aren't better videos. We went into this exercise thinking that participants would prefer our headers that were signaling our product featured short videos of these candidates, similar to participants in research we conducted for the Candidate Connect product in other regions of the world, like Brazil and Miami. However, participants responded poorly to this version as they felt that the term short videos meant that the videos provided incomplete information about the candidates. Third, keep it local. Our participants expected clear reference to elections happening in their local area, given the fact that this particular election we were covering was taking place over nearly 2 months and in 7 different phases. We therefore changed our source string to have a more local feel. And third, watch out for jargon. Some of the central concepts that we built a framework of our product around just didn't translate. Terms like constituency or district. And this exercise helped us identify linguistic mismatches between how we were discussing elections within our product team versus how our users in India were talking about elections.
So there's a second creative exercise in addition to highlighting that we've used in content testing, and this method is called version testing. So in this method, you are asking participants to review multiple variations of a content string for a single interaction or moment, and each of these are printed on a separate sheet of paper. So like highlighting, you will first ask them to evaluate each string for what it is that you want to learn. And then the second step, and how it differs from highlighting, is that you ask them to contrast all of the strings and select the one that they think is best.
And version testing can help you understand comprehension and suitability. So for example, which of these 4 versions is easiest for participants to understand, and do participants find most appropriate?
And unlike highlighting, version testing can also be conducted within product mocks, or it can be conducted as a standalone text. And here is an example of when I say product mocks, this is what this means. And so these are 2 different versions of strings that we wanted to test, again, for the Brazilian election, but you'll see them placed within a product mock versus just on its own on a sheet of paper.
It's also great for testing multiple hypotheses at once. So for example, if your stakeholder has a very different idea of what tone is best for your product, version testing is an easy and efficient way to figure out how your real users feel about it.
Version testing is also most successfully conducted with shorter length content because long content blocks will place a heavier cognitive load on your research participants, and it'll take them a long time to get through and compare everything. So the shorter strings work best.
Version testing played a key role in our development of another product meant to encourage our Indian users to show that they had voted in India's 2019 election. Our product team developed 3 hypotheses of the type of conversation that would be most effective at encouraging our users in India to engage with this product and to share that they had voted in this election's long time frame. So a first conversation that was framed around community, that's one that's featured on the left, and it has a counter that will increase every time a different user shares that they had voted. A conversation framed around personal written expression, which is featured in the middle, and a conversation framed around personal photo expression, which is featured on the right-hand side. And we presented the same 50 participants that we met with in Chandigarh and Chennai with each of these versions one by one. We shared text-only versions with half of our participants, and this content in designs, like presented on these slides, with the other half to determine whether and how our design might also be impacting our users' understanding.
And so what were our findings from this research that we conducted? We had a significant increase in the number of people who shared that they voted using our new content and design patterns that we had identified in version testing research. We scaled the election counter for all of our international election products going forward because it was so successful. And then over 3 million Indian users shared that they voted during the election using our civic tools on Facebook or Instagram, and over 6.8 million people engaged with the feature.
And version testing revealed some really important points for how it is that we should be facilitating this conversation with our users in India. First, community framing doesn't resonate as hypothesized. We really thought that a community-focused tone would work best, as it had with other products that we had launched, meant to encourage our users to share that they had voted in other regions. However, in this particular instance, it just confused our participants and actually introduced some risk. Second, complete sentences and punctuation is key. Our participants shared that whenever they were seeing versions of this content that were phrases and not complete sentences, that it felt incomplete to them. And whenever we asked them to rewrite these phrases in their own words, they were always adding in punctuation. And third, design can drastically alter content meaning. So we saw this most prominently through the versions that we shared that featured a map. Our participants had very different ideas of what experience would be when they were reading that content that was independent of the design versus when it was featured within the context of that map. When they were looking at it independent, they thought that they would be sharing a picture of themselves after they'd voted, versus when they were seeing it featured alongside of the map, they thought that they would be being invited to click into the map and get to see how others had shared photos of themselves across the country voting.
And so to recap, you can use content testing to deepen your understanding of how content drives a user's experience. You can uncover content comprehension, tone, discoverability, and cultural appropriateness. And it allows you to establish a solid cross-cultural communication strategy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Very, very interesting. And we've got lots of questions that have come in for you. So what I'd like to do is go straight to them because we have limited time.
We have a problem connecting with Aminda. I will take over the questions to ask our guests. There was a first question to Mercedes. How many testers do you have for the highlighting testing?
I'll let Camilla speak to anything about the research side and recruiting, since that's her area of expertise.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. I think that it typically will vary based on how many variables it is that you're aiming to test for. So one thing that was really important for our team is also thinking about not only how different users across different regions within a given country might respond to language, but also how different users across different literacy levels or digital literacy levels might also be responding to the content. When we're engaging in more qualitative forms of testing, we typically try to adhere to the more standard Nielsen recommendation of having at least 5 participants per variable that you're testing. So I think like having that in mind and then building off of that of how many other variables that you're aiming to test could give you an idea of what's most appropriate for your given research design. In our study that we presented here, we had 50 participants because there were many things that we were aiming to test. So we were aiming to test across things like gender, as well as literacy level, like reading literacy level, as well as digital literacy level, and also accounting for different regions and age groups as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. The most popular questions which I see linked to I don't know who of you would be able to answer. Let's see. How do you make sure that the people representative to the population you want to address? Who of you would be able to answer that question?
That's a bit what Camilla already touched on.
Yeah, I can expand on that. So one thing that we typically aim to do before it is that we engage in any form of UX research, so not even just for content testing, is we do a lot of just preliminary research to get a better understanding of some key points about the respective cultures it is that we're going in to understand. So making sure that as a result, we're making sure that we're not just accounting for people in different regions, but if it is also important within a given location to account for different religious representation or gender, etc. We'll work with Facebook. We typically will end up working with a vendor to make sure that we are identifying all of those individuals and developing a robust screener so that we are able to see of those potential individuals who are interested in participating in our study, that we have that mix that we're looking for that is more representative overall of the region that we're going into.
Hello, I'm back again. Thanks for your patience and thanks, Lukasz, for continuing the questions. So we have one from Haley here. I hope you haven't answered it already, which has 13 votes. And it says, do you take plain language, clear writing strategies into consideration in your content writing?
I can take that one. We definitely do, and we have a specific role at Facebook. They may be called copywriters at other companies. They're called content designers at Facebook, and we obviously have very robust style guides for every language. But for English, we also have pretty strict guidelines around the way we communicate. And so, of course, making sure that we communicate clearly is a goal of the content design team. And they're really good partners for the translation team and for I18N on my side, because we both are very focused on the language side of things.
Okay, now, Mercedes, there is a question for you. Maybe you've already answered it. How many testers do you have for the highlighting testing?
Yeah, we did cover that while you were gone.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Logging out, logging back in, so I missed a couple of the questions. Okay, I think in that case, at the moment, we've actually answered everything that we have. I
do see one about professional translators, and I just wanted to say that yes,
I was just about to ask that one. So the translations that you tested with users were originally produced by professional translators? ?
They were, and then I also wanted to speak to another team that is on the I18N team, and this is our language management team. And so I work very closely with them, and we have language leads for all of our key languages on Facebook. And so they actually came with us on a lot of the research. So our Hindi language manager traveled with us to India, and this is really important because then we can iterate on those translations while we're actually in the field. So if something is not landing well, or something is doing conversely really well, and we want to get a different rate on something else, we're actually able to change those translations live during the research.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Well, I think we're going to have to leave that there because we've got other speakers to go on. But thank you very much indeed for logging on so early in the morning and for being so bright and so giving us such a fascinating insight. Really, really interesting. Now I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is Emmanuelle DUMAS from the content agency at Booking.com. In her recorded presentation, she's going to explain the company's 3 approaches to localization and translation. But before that, I'd like to run a quick poll. And for that, I need our expert polling person from DG Translation, Margit. Hi, Margit. So, would you like to introduce the poll for us?
Sure. We are here to ask you a question. And the question is, at what percentage do you think guests interact in non-English languages with Booking.com? And I will give you some time to vote in a second. So, you will now see the options on your screen, and you will have to just click on it, and after you have voted you will see the results coming in, and we will close the voting then after half a minute or so.
Okay, you should see the poll question come up on the left-hand side of your screen where you normally see the presentation slides, and you can just click on the option that you want. And I can see that we already have some people voting here. It's between 20 and 50%. 50%. Oh, it's going up and down here. We'll see. This is the good thing. Once you've voted, you can actually see how everybody else is voting, and the numbers go up and down. Okay, there's a few neck and neck. People don't seem to like so much the 20% option. Okay. Margaret, how many seconds have we got left to vote?
I think we can close it. I see no more votes coming in.
Okay.
10 more seconds.
All right, get the last votes in. Okay.
And I close it now.
Okay, so we've now closed the voting. And what was the winner? And the winner was 50%.
Yeah, 47% in the end. Yeah, and 15% for the 20%, and 38 people guessed that it would be even up to 80%.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much indeed. That is wonderful. Thank you for participating in our poll. Thank you, Margaret. Fantastic as usual, making sure it all works for us. So We're going to find out, we've seen what your ideas are, but in Emmanuelle DUMAS' presentation, she will tell us what the real figure is. And even though she's got her presentation in a video, she will be here live afterwards to answer questions directly after that. So please do send them in and vote on your favourite questions for her. So without any further delay, let's hear from Emmanuelle DUMAS.
Hello, my name is Emmanuelle DUMAS. I'm heading language solutions at Booking.com. I'd like to start by thanking the Translating Europe Forum organization for the opportunity to join this discussion and present on translating for online interaction. And I will be spending the next 10 to 15 minutes trying to summarize how we do this at Booking.com. But first, I'll start with some simple data. At Booking.com, we know that approximately 20% of interactions on our platform involve bookers and partners using English. This shows how fundamental translating is for our business. And the fact that approximately 80% of interactions happen in a language other than English is basically both the driver and also the result of all of our translation and localization efforts in the last 15 years or so. At Booking.com, we currently make our platform available in 45 languages. Our aim is to make it easier for everyone to experience the world, and to achieve this, we want to make relevant content, provide relevant content to our users in their language at every step of their journey on our platform. So from the localization and translation perspective, in terms of content, what this looks like, here, for example, is an example of what we can find on our platform. This is a typical hotel page, and you can see there's a lot of different content types. There's of course the user interface and messages that are translated by our internal language specialists in very close collaboration with UX copywriters in order to support the cycle of A/B testing. But on this page, you can also see the hotel description, of course, and reviews. So we also translate, of course, all of this type of content for our apps, for mobile, etc. What is perhaps less visible to the general public is that we also translate a lot of content for our partners, to support our partners. Here, for example, we see this is the platform that we offer to our partners to support them in the management of their properties. And this goes from very simple fact sheets, maybe about managing availability, to also articles or tutorials on how to improve their performance of their property, for example, on our platform. Here's an example of a video. We also translate and subtitle videos for this. In the last 5 years at Booking, we have made a strong effort to try and move away from the purely transactional platform that we are maybe more known for, and to increasingly offer richer travel content to our users. And here is an example of some articles that we have published very recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, on the future of travel. And so these articles are based on a study that was made in the summer in 28 countries and on 20,000 travelers, and to make travel predictions and to support our users with more inspirational content, maybe in view of future travels. So now that we've seen some of the types of contents that we translate, I'd like to touch upon how we do that. So to put it quite simply, we have three main approaches to localization and translation. We have our in-house approximately 200 of them, and they are based in country. They mostly manage the key branded content, UI, like we saw earlier, and basically everything that's highly branded. We have freelancers as well. We have, I think, a pool of approximately 2,000 external freelancers who support with the more maybe longer copy or descriptive content. And of course, we also rely on the machine translation. And depending on the requirement for the project or different types of content, then we will use different means of fulfillment. So one or the other of the approaches, or sometimes a mix of them. So to give an idea of the volumes that we translate this year with each of the fulfillment approaches, with our internal teams, we translated 78 million words to date. With our freelancers, 238 million words. And over 3 billion words translated year to date with the machine translation. Our language specialists are, I think at Booking we have a very, we're very lucky to have the model that we have with our language specialist as a very strong internal team, and I think that's what makes us really strong with multilingual content. So I want to give a quick highlight on the role of the language specialists, who are very, very key to the localization. So as a general rule, the language specialists localize all of the product and marketing copy. That's really their core work, and they work alongside UX copywriters on this and other internal teams. They're very close to the product teams and very knowledgeable, of course, about the product and the brand. So they are really the best people to be doing this work. They also translate all kinds of other documents, from surveys to PR pitches to, as we saw, videos, campaigns, or they do subtitling as well. They manage the work of freelancers. They are very involved in supporting our MT team with the development of models. So the language specialists effectively assess models when they are in development. They support they completely drive consistency and quality for their language. And as I said earlier, they are they are internal employees, which is why they are so strong at what they do. They are very passionate about the product, very often passionate about travel. They're very brand aware. So it's a great asset to have internal language specialists. And the people here on this slide, Elzbieta and Marlène, are part of the French team. They're both language specialists in the French team. They will be attending the networking sessions, and I know that they will be completely happy to answer any questions. So please reach out to them during the networking session. I'd like to talk now briefly about another great tool, or something that makes us very different. I think that sets us aside. That we have developed at Booking.com. It's our machine translation. And here's a brief history of the machine translation journey at Booking. So in 2014, we tested SNT models for some specific type of content. And I think it took a few years to assess and decide that it was very important for the future to develop, because we have our volumes of content are so high. So we decided to make the investment and actually have a team, an internal team, build our NMT models. So we use neural machine translation. We built it internally. It started in 2017. In 2018, we had our first positive experiment with MT and already produced 1 billion words in that year. First use case was the hotel's description, property descriptions. But very quickly, in the last 2 years, we've actually developed our models to support with more use cases. So last year with reviews, and more recently this year, we have also deployed MT for Q&A and also to support our sister companies. And looking ahead, we want to develop more support for real-time MT. We have currently MT available in 24 languages. Okay, so coming to the end of this presentation, what's next for us? I think in the coming years, what will be very important for us and for me and my team, what to focus on, we are trying to support with more native writing, so support the business whenever we can with more native writing initiatives. We want to see how often we can actually write without a source text. So include our language specialists, for example, earlier on in the process, at the same time as the copy team is creating the brief and brainstorming on the idea or for a product. We want to support localized marketing and be closer to local trends. So for that, we want to support local social media channels more. And we've already got a few initiatives on this, especially in APAC. And finally, we want to continue improving our MT models with more languages and more use cases, and including, I think, pretty soon, more usage of real-time MT to remove language boundaries. And this is it. So thank you very much, and look forward to supporting with any question.
Aminda, as you can hear, has slight problems with the connection with the microphone. We are waiting to fix it, but in the meantime, I will ask this question to Emmanuelle. Do you hire freelance translators, Emmanuelle?
We do. Actually, yes, we do very, very regularly. And we actually hire freelance translators on our platform, in our booking.careers platform. at the same time as we hire internal translators. So if anyone's interested, I would recommend to just check the careers at booking.com page and see what's there. We regularly hire freelance translators.
Okay, while we wait for Aminda to fix her connection, we will go to the next question, which is related to your in-house platform. Are you using in-house platform of freelance translators to create your content? A mix of all of them, or what distribution across the 3 linguist groups?
So in terms of the translation management platform, I'm not 100% sure if I understand the question. So in terms of the repartition of workload between our internal teams and external teams, I think I explained it during the presentation. Both our internal teams and our freelancers work through the same platform. Actually, internally, for our internal copy, we have a translation management system that's really unique to our user interface. But for every other type of content, we use a translation management platform, which is used both by our internal teams and our freelance translators as well. I hope that answers the question.
Excellent. And there is one more which arrived just now, and someone was asking if you. I'm just trying to scroll down to these questions, which are: how will you integrate native writing alongside the translation of content? What types of text would be written from a brief, and which would be translated?
So we. Really specific to some types of content. So, for example, maybe marketing, taglines, where we want to test what version will work better. We generally try to go for native writing as much as we can, for also social media, maybe. So it's really specific to, in general, marketing content, where we want to be to sound very, very local and adapted to the market. It's something that we want to do more of in the future, so we keep experimenting on that. And all the time when we use our internal teams.
Hello. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. And I'm back. I'm sorry about these technological problems. Yesterday it all worked perfectly. There's always a day when it doesn't. So thanks for Lukasz and everyone for bearing with me. I know we've been asking the questions and we've had some more coming in the meantime. We have done quite a lot about translation. There's one here that says, so that your NMT engine was fed from the start with your own big data. Have we asked that question yet?
No, I can answer this. So the answer is yes, absolutely. In fact, the reason that we started, that we thought it would make complete sense to start developing our own neural machine translation was effectively because we had so much translated data specifically to our field. So the descriptions of the hotel descriptions, property descriptions, we had translated this content for already 12 or 15 years. We had huge volumes of data, and it made complete sense to develop our NMT on the basis of our data. And that's also why it performs so well on our content. And we reach very, very fast, very high levels of quality, because we have so much data.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think we're going to leave those questions there because we've now got to go on to our next speaker, who is Jessica SEIP, Head of Communications and Campaigns at openPetition. That site is available in all EU official languages, plus Russian, Turkish, Ukrainian, and Albanian. She's going to give us a very honest assessment of how the platform's language development happened and the mistakes that were made on the way. And she's also asking for your help because she's still got some things outstanding. Jessica SEIP, please reveal all.
Thank you, Aminda. So, yeah, as a European platform, for sure, we have to have a lot of languages. And so our platform is for petitions, campaigns, and initiatives. Participate to make politics kind of. We need to break down language barriers. And so openPetition, this is what it looks like if you're on your landing page. If you can zoom a little bit in on your screen, maybe, you probably don't understand anything because it's in German, and unlikely you really love the German language and can understand it, you won't understand anything. This is why our boss is a German guy and started this project 10 years ago in German to improve participation in Germany for citizens. And here we actually start with mistake 1. If you, at the end at least, plan to have an international platform, please do not start to build it in German because it's really hard work afterwards. So yeah, we had this trouble spot then, but hey, thank God we already had a bigger community then. I guess it was like in 2015 we already had kind of like 10 or 15 languages. And this was all because we were texting our community, hey, we know you're German, but maybe you can speak another language, or in either case, you're bilingual, or you know somebody who understands German and can translate from German to language, whatever. So this was function until a certain point, and here's mistake 2. We trusted kind of our community a bit too much. Well, I mean, the thing was they were translating voluntary. So because we didn't have the money, we're a non-profit. So I think this is maybe important for everybody who isn't in a big corporation like Facebook or like Booking, who I would assume have just a bit better resources to do that in a really professional way. And this is honest, we couldn't do that in such a professional way. So there was mistake 2 then, that we were experiencing that some users or translators, voluntary translators, were doing hard work and it was helping, but at some point it was just ending because they had private lives, other jobs, or whatever. For example, in the slide, you can see Icelandic, that we had 3 translators for Icelandic. And now it's really translated 100%. But until we were getting there, it was such a long way, and it was not possible to do that only with humans. So we tried something different. We were thinking, hey, we're digital, it's the 21st century, so let's use some digital opportunities and advances. And we did that. We were using an API by Google Translators. So it's kind of like an automatic interface, an automatic translation of words. For example, in the slide, you can see the word initiative, which is...
Sorry for interrupting you, but you are not sending any slides to us.
Oh, why can't you see them?
You are not broadcasting any slides to us. We are very sorry. But we were thinking that you basically decided not to go with slides. Did you? So I can play your pre-recorded presentation if you wish. Or
Ooh. Well, yeah.
You can continue.
Okay, so now I will just continue. Damn it! It was such a beautiful presentation, but I hope you will see it somewhere.
It's your control, basically, so you have to decide what to do and how to change slides.
I'm changing slides, so...
Nothing is coming to us. I'm very sorry.
Okay, no pasa nada. So, all right. So, but now everybody still can't see the slides, I guess, so I will just try to make this more metaphorically. So, all right. So basically the Google API was doing this. We had an English or German word initiative. It's the same in both languages. And we need to translate that. And then we used Google translators to do that automatically. And then it ended with framtak, for example, which is the Icelandic word for initiative. So by that, everything was translated. And this was really, really good. And then we were coming to the third problem. Well, you know, technique is clever, but not as clever as native speakers. And so there was just a lot of problems with the context. Because, for example, actually, our platform is still full of examples. And this is really shitty because if I'm a native in Icelandic and I visit openPetition and I see that some phrases are a bit strange or I'm a bit irritated about that, then I think this is unprofessional, this is not serious, and I probably don't. Well, here the user experience stops, and this is a real problem. So we were like, okay, we need native speakers to double check that now. So we were hiring freelancers. We were kind of like saving a bit resources, a bit money to do that. And then they were checking the 100% translation of Google translations. And this was also helping, but still there was actually a problem because as a translator, you actually have to have your own user experience or at least the full context, which whenever you translate a whole platform is way easier if you have that whole user experience of the platform, if you know how it's function. And this time we didn't have, or the translators didn't have. So again and again, no matter what we were doing, there was another mistake made or another problem was coming up. But at least it was working. So our traffic was rising. It's already high in all German-speaking areas around Switzerland, Austria, and in Germany. But then it was rising, especially in Italy, in Greece, and in Romania. But then next problem again. I was saying it. Do not hesitate to ask, but please. Not in Icelandic, for example. You know, so though the platform and its content is translated, it doesn't mean that our support, for example, if you want to reach out to me by an email and I shall give you some support and you text me in Icelandic, I don't know how to, I'm not able to speak that probably beautiful language. So I would need some machine again, and probably this will be not so personalized, or maybe I don't get your question or can't. I just won't be such a good support then, and this really sucks, and we want to do this better, and the only solution we have for that problem would be country managers. So we need, it's a bit like Emmanuelle said it before, it's a range of solutions, and you always have to look how much money do we have, how much time do we have, what is the special case and everything. But by that, we want to have country managers, real people who are checking all the stuff Google Translate is doing, and to have a close relationship to the people, to the local people. But yeah, to actually hire new people to be a country manager, this is a lot of money, like really a lot of money and time to explain everything about the platform to them. openPetition is actually a giant platform, and we have 10 million people. I can write an email by that with our newsletter, but the actual team is super small. So we don't have the possibilities to do that. And as a nonprofit, money is always a bit difficult. Let's say it like this. So maybe you have an idea. Actually, I want to ask you now. Maybe some of you has an idea, or it is just this melting pot of solutions then and when, and you always have to check it out again, what is possible in that moment. All right, so now I say thank you for listening, and hopefully somebody has seen my presentation, and if not, maybe we can upload it somewhere. All right. And I see.
Thank you for that. That was very interesting. I'm really sorry we couldn't see your presentation, but don't worry, everybody. You will be able to access it and download it after the event. You'll be able to see that. So thanks for your patience there. We do have time for a few of your questions. One of the ones that I wanted to ask, because I mean, you talked about how you actually decided on the languages. So obviously you said you made the mistake by starting in German, but then how did you make the decision on what languages to follow up on? And obviously you've got unusual languages in there as well, like Russian, Ukrainian, Turkish. Can you tell us how you came to those decisions?
Sure. So yeah, we started in German, and then next step, whenever you translate in a European context, is for sure English. So this was our biggest task back then, to translate into English. We did. And followed by that, we wanted to be a European platform, which meant that in Europe you have 24 official languages, EU languages. So we were like, okay, we need that. But also, most of you know that here, for example, in Berlin, here are a lot of people who speak Russian, who are Russian, or Turkish, and so on. Or my boss, for example, he learned Russian in school. So, yeah, though you're living in Germany or whatever, doesn't mean that, or have to mean that you can speak German. And so we wanted to break down every kind of language barrier which is existing.
Okay, interesting. Now we've got a question that's been sent in that has 6 votes, and I'm not quite sure if this is for you, or maybe it was for someone that we had earlier. But I think it's interesting, perhaps for you anyway. The question is: how do you handle the translation of terms and conditions and contracts to ensure full understanding and a good user experience?
Yeah. Well, especially terms of use, or for example, also the terms of data is really important. So this was actually the first piece of paper we let translated by Google, and we're giving to real people to make sure that this is correct, and we were communicating with them. There we had to have a bit more effort because it's way too important. And we wanted to make sure that we obey every legal right in every language, because we're doing this. So, yeah, there we needed professional people to do that. And for user experience, well, right now, not everybody has the best user experience. Depends on the language you choose to visit openPetition, and this is not good, and we have to become better in that. But it's funny because actually one thing what we are doing now is also that we're doing Google Ads in every language with professional people like translators, so that other people get to know openPetition in their country, for example, in Icelandic. So now there's a Google ad, or when you start Google in Iceland, and Icelandic is your browser explorer language, then you will find openPetition immediately in Icelandic. And maybe, or we hope that still a few people know us from a professional English-based impression, and that they will be like, okay, I can speak Icelandic, and maybe I can help. So yeah, as I told, we want to have still a range of solutions. I think that's the best way until now, and so also we love to have volunteers.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll take one more question. This has had 2 votes. How much time does it take to post-edit Google Translate usually?
To post-edit? Depends. So I was doing this too, and it was so much pain because it's some words. There are just some words in languages, or like petition, as simple as this is. It was really hard for me to get or to know what is a petition in Dutch. So I texted with a friend of mine, a Dutch native speaker, for example, for, I don't know, half a day, because there were a lot of synonyms, and this was really hard then. And before you do anything, you have to do this. So you can't say this and this takes this and this time. It always depends on the language and how easy it is. For example, English is just a really simple language. And this is why everybody, or in Europe, we use that, because it's quite easy to communicate. But there are different languages which are quite harder, Russian, for example, or German, in communicating with and really understanding. And there's not one single word for some single thing.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm sorry about the problems with your presentation, but as I say, hopefully we'll be able to pass those on and people will be able to see it again after this session. And now we're going to turn to our final speaker, Toni SANT from Wikimedia Community Malta. He's going to tell us how Maltese content has slowly grown, not only catering for the Maltese community on the island itself, but also for people much further afield. Now, Toni, hopefully your presentation is going to work, but if not, I will fill while you go in and out. But I will now give you the floor, and hopefully maybe technologically good things be with you. Okay, we can't hear you for a start.
Well, that part is my fault.
Okay, fantastic. Now we can hear you. Thank you. And we can see your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Aminda. So indeed, I will be giving a presentation here today about engaging with Maltese translation on Wikipedia. With smaller languages and Wikipedia. So in as much as I'm focusing on Maltese as a language, this much of what I'm about to present to you also applies to other smaller languages. I think it's important always to start any presentation on Wikipedia by reminding ourselves what the mission of this online encyclopedia really is. And here we have this wonderful phrase where we use these couple of sentences. Imagine a world in which every person on the planet shares in the sum of all human knowledge. And that is what we're doing. So with this in mind, I think, this really and truly frames everything that is properly associated with Wikipedia and how it operates. In terms of Maltese, I think this is the general Wikipedia interface here that you see. So if you log into wikipedia.org, you get presented with all the different languages, and there's literally hundreds of languages. There's almost 300 languages, and Maltese is lost in there somewhere. It's one of many, and not only is it one of many, it's one in which there are very, very few articles. Here, for comparison with other languages, are some statistics. I mean, I'll make this simpler by taking away the larger languages. I picked here English, Italian, and Swedish, simply also, to bring in some geographic proximity to the other smaller languages, which I've picked, which are Welsh and Icelandic. Which are even in some cases larger or smaller than Maltese, as the case may be. But you can see that these numbers are minuscule, and things are not proportional across the languages, I guess is the point that I'm trying to really make here. But if you're really interested in this, there's a little URL there. If you search on the English language Wikipedia for a list of Wikipedias, you can find all the languages and their statistics fairly easily. Just search for list of Wikipedias on Wikipedia. And I pause here for a minute to share with you a quote from quite a few years ago now, when Wikipedia was still in its infancy. Wikipedia was originally established on the 15th of January in 2001. So next January we'll be celebrating its 20th birthday. So it was only 6 years or 6.5 years old in August 2007 when its co-founder, Jimmy Wales, said, and I'll read this quote for you because I think it's very pertinent to what I'm trying to the point I'm trying to make here. Certainly within Wikipedia right now, we are seeing some fairly successful projects in small European languages. You don't really need a Welsh language Wikipedia, perhaps. The number of people who speak Welsh who don't also speak English is very small and getting smaller every year. So why do we have a Welsh Wikipedia? Well, people wanted it, so we're making it, and the language preservation is the main motive. It is their mother tongue, and they want to keep it alive, keep its literature alive. Certainly some of the larger languages like Basque or Catalan have very successful projects. I definitely see that preserving parts of your language and culture through collaborative projects makes a lot of sense. Welsh has gone on since then to become as large as Basque and Catalan, or more or less, but Maltese is still lagging far and very, very far behind. If we look at very quickly at a kind of a timeline of the Maltese language Wikipedia, it starts roughly around 2004, with most of the other main language Wikipedias that were appearing at the time. Within a matter of 3 years, there were 1,000 articles. These doubled by 2010, but only trebled until 2014, and it's only a trickle what's been going on in the last few years. I think it's important to point out that over the years that things have been trickling, an organization called Wikimedia Community Malta was established. I was a co-founder of this, and I will be telling you a little bit more about this and how we're using this now in collaboration with others and working with others and getting official affiliation and establishing a Wikipedian in residence in Valletta as a way to improve these numbers. In essence, Wikimedia Community Malta, as a voluntary organization, it's a small non-profit NGO, engages primarily with 3 annual activities. And these are called Wiki Loves Monuments, Wiki Loves Art, and CEE Spring, something that CEE stands for Central and Eastern. There's a missing N there. Apologies for the typo. In Eastern Europe. And there's me delivering a training session for new Wikipedia editors, along with other colleagues from Wikimedia Community Malta in Malta. Wiki Loves Monuments essentially is an annual photo contest, which takes place normally in September every year. And this takes place in many countries around the world. There's normally between 40 and 50 countries taking part. And it provides an opportunity for stunning photos of very beautiful World Heritage sites in many cases, but also, cultural heritage sites and built heritage in this particular case, to be made available freely for use then, along with Wikipedia articles. Just to give you a sense of some numbers here, the Maltese numbers are very amazing in terms of Malta's size. You would expect them to be more like they were in 2018 and 2019 fairly regularly, but instead, we get quite a few participants, as you can see, particularly from the upturn we've had again this year, with again, Wikimedia Community Malta making efforts to make this a better experience for everyone. Then moving on to Wiki Loves Art, which is a celebration of art normally around February and March. This has been taking place in Malta since 2017. It also takes place in several other countries around the world, and it has different flavors. There's a number of cultural and arts organizations that we collaborate with in Malta, and of course our counterparts in other countries collaborate with other arts organizations, depending on where it is. A particular flavor that we've given this in Malta since 2018 is a focus on the gender gap, which is to say, looking at women artists and ensuring that the gender gap that is prevalent not only across Wikipedia but in society at large is addressed more specifically. And here you can see some of the encouraging numbers that we've been working with, and I say this, having explained to you just a couple of minutes ago how small or how slow even the relative growth on the Maltese language Wikipedia has been so far. But what's interesting here is that things are slowly beginning to happen, and I don't think it's just a matter of numbers, because we don't simply want to see machine translated pages and articles that are not very friendly to anyone who comes in to read them because they haven't been copy edited or proofread in any way. I think what's been useful from engaging with the Central and Eastern European Spring contest, and this was another contest where we essentially invite people to translate articles about Malta from around Central and Eastern European countries. There were about 28 countries and languages that took part in this, and this has been happening for some years. Malta took part about this in for the first year in 2020, but the positives and the negatives, if you will, on this slide here: the dissemination of content about Malta, engagement within the community itself, an opportunity to engage with the Maltese language Wikipedia, but also an opportunity to fix interface issues. For example, until just a few months ago, if you went to the Maltese language Wikipedia, anything that had not been translated within the interface into Maltese defaulted to Italian, oddly enough. And this in itself is slightly problematic for a number of reasons that I won't go into here. Perhaps someone will ask me about this at the Q&A session at the end. But there are negatives, of course, so things like the fact that this is a specialized event for a very small wiki. So we end up focusing on things that perhaps are less encyclopedic and more trivial, relatively speaking, in relation to the country or countries that you're dealing with. Translating orphan articles. So an example of this is we would have, a wonderful article about some water reservoir in Poland, but nothing about reservoirs more generally, or even more simply water as an encyclopedia entry. And also, as I mentioned earlier, this issue of translating low-quality articles. So, if the original in the original language has also already been translated into English, which in many cases, of course, serves as a bridge language, then there are issues there that I'm sure many of you in the audience who are professional translators know about these right away. So I think here there's a need to focus on vital articles, I suppose, is one of the points that's being made. Here, the rest of these slides that I'll gloss through here, talk about, look at some more of the detail in terms of the dissemination about content about Malta. So now you have pages in many of the Eastern European languages about things that are in Malta, including Maltese cities and buildings and prominent people in Malta, both historically and in a contemporary sense. So you can see, there's an increase in this, as well as with the engagement. There's more people working together and a chance to engage with external editors, that is to say, editors from other languages as well. And the figures kind of indicate that there's this kind of an upswing. I said how things were trickling very slowly over the past 5 years, but you can see that now, since this very active engagement through the translations with Central and Eastern European languages, we have the significant spike here that is not accidental, but that is a result of what's being planned, and this shows the engagement by people who have been writing articles about then Central and Eastern European subjects in return, of course, so that in the Maltese language Wikipedia we have a number of articles now. The fixing of the interface is something I spoke about, but this goes on. And the reason it goes on is, because the community is very small. So the translation of any interface, of course, into another language is going to be a very complex operation. And so it's about striking the right balance between translating the interface and translating the content, especially seeing, again, as Jimmy Wales pointed out so many years ago, that almost everyone and anyone who's going to be contributing to the Maltese language Wikipedia will also be very well versed in the use of English. So I think where I'll close this is to point out some of these vital articles. I think we are here looking at some very basic encyclopedia entries that you would expect in English, for example. Of course, as in many other languages, you will find entries about Earth, human history, language, and these terms. But you'll see that only half of them, or just over half of them, exist also in Maltese. Human history, language, life, and technology, for example, do not presently exist as entries in the Maltese language Wikipedia. It gets even worse if we start becoming subject specific. So here, for example, are entries relating to geography, very, very basic entries like things like sea, desert, forest, capital city, continent map, etc. And you'll see that only geography is the entry that exists so far in the Maltese language Wikipedia. It gets horrendous if we go into politics, for example, where for some reason only communism and ideology, out of all these terms that I've picked here at random, exist in the Maltese language Wikipedia. So what we're hoping to do is we are hoping to engage through the language office of the representative office of the European Commission in Malta to engage with professional translators across the European institutions, even because we know know that translators do use Wikipedia as readers, but it helps us if we are able to get not only the machine translations in, but also for these to be finished by professional translators who are very familiar with these tools. And not only that, still, though, however, mindful that this is not a commercial service. This is not a commercial website. I will remind you that while Wikipedia is perhaps the fifth or the sixth, depending on how you count, most popular website around the world, it is the number one website that is a non-commercial website. That is to say, one that doesn't harvest data, one that doesn't have advertising, and one that doesn't in any way monetize the activities that go on it. So I think there are four elements that define any encyclopedia, and we should also keep these in mind going forward. Its subject matter, its scope, its method of organization, and its method of production. And these are precisely what guide us into moving forward. And I think, I can stop here. This is truthfully the end of my presentation. You can see how the subject matter, we want this to be comprehensive. The scope is the sum of knowledge that's free, that I explained in the beginning. The method of organization, of course, is online, but its method of production is primarily volunteer supported. And that's my presentation. I'm happy to take your questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And we already have lots of questions. I'm going to go straight to them. The one with the highest number of votes is from Nicola. And it says, are Wikipedia's admins now more selective about who can edit the articles? Are there more professional editors who would take more notice about the terminology in a specific language?
Yes. Well, thank you. This is an excellent question. Well, I would say that it's about striking the right balance. That is to say, Wikipedia is and will remain open and free to everyone and anyone. But having said that, there are now efforts through organizations that are affiliated directly with the Wikimedia Foundation, such as Wikimedia Community Malta, that kind of tries to broker this professional arrangement. While not, of course, excluding in any way the volunteer efforts. And the volunteer efforts and the crowdsourcing are essential. We have to keep in mind that by its very nature, Wikipedia remains a very, very fluid experiment, really. And the fact that it exists even is quite a wonder in itself. But to answer the question, yes, there's more engagement now, and particularly on the Maltese language Wikipedia, we are quite keen to engage more with professional translators, mainly because we believe that this is a two-way street. Yeah, that this benefits also the broader professional translation community.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Elisabetta. Which profile do your Wikimedia editors have? Are they rather content specialist, or do they also have some linguistic profiles?
Okay, if we are speaking about the Maltese language Wikimedia editors, I would say that here what we have are mainly generalists, because the community is fairly small. Whereas if we look at other languages and the slightly larger languages, you will of course find more specialists working on this. And if it's, for example, medical things, articles relating to COVID, for example, right now, in many cases, what you have there are specialists working in that area, and there. Of course, when we come to translations into smaller languages such as Maltese, the terminology is indeed what is the key rather than the knowledge of the subject matter. More specifically, as in the writing of the original article into then the translation of that article.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Teodora, which has got 6 votes. And the question is, who controls post-edits translations in Wikipedia? A majority of translations into Serbian are quite wrong. How do you preserve quality? Well, I don't expect you to talk about the Serbian, but maybe you can talk about how it works from your side.
Well, yes. I mean, it's actually the same across all the languages, in the sense that this is crowdsourced. So the quality is crowdsourced. Yes, there are some controls in place, of course, but historically, even with the English language Wikipedia, quality was an issue, before there was a critical mass that overturned the question of quality. And I think so in some ways, there is, of course, a core group of administrators that make sure that, to keep away things like vandalism and things like spam, and there are bots to enable with the exercising of some of this. However, it is the crowd itself, which is to say the readers, that also then can come in and edit even things as simple as copy editing and correcting, punctuation and what have you. Anyone can do this. And I myself, for example, have made minor corrections in languages I know far less than I know, say, for example, English or Maltese.
Okay, thank you. And I think the last question, which it should be nice and simple, is active users per language. Is this only people who are logged in, or just anybody looking at a Wikipedia page in that language?
Right. I didn't dwell too much on this. No, when we say an active user, we mean someone who has registered an account and has been active in some way over the past 30 days. So active users on Wikipedia are really those people who are editing and contributing to the Wikipedia projects. And I say Wikipedia projects because this goes beyond Wikipedia itself and goes into things like Wikidata, Wikivoyager, for example, Wikicommons, Wikimedia Commons, and a number of other projects. So active users is anyone who has registered an account and has performed at least one edit over the past 30 days.
Okay, we do have more questions, but I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there because we're now coming to the end of this session. Thank you very much indeed, Toni, and to all our speakers. And you can actually join Toni in one of the virtual networking sessions that's going to be starting right after we've finished here. And I'd like to thank all our expert speakers this morning. Thank you, particularly to Jessica. I can confirm that your presentation is now uploaded and people can now see it. So we apologize for those technical hitches. I feel like we're all pirates on stormy red seas of technology going up and down, but we're coping very well, and thank you for your patience also for those of you who are watching. So straight after this session, I've already mentioned there are 7 virtual networking sessions. I'm not going to go through the whole list. If you actually go to the entry for today on the daily program, if you click on virtual networking, you can see a list of who is where joining Toni, and there are 6 other sessions. We do know that some of you had some problems talking about technology, and so our advice to you is it works best if you log in on a computer or a laptop, so not a tablet and not the app, and it's best if you access it through Chrome. Now those networking sessions will continue till 1:30, and obviously if you have problems or whatever, and you find other ways to hook up and connect between participants, feel free to do that. After that networking, we'll have a 30-minute break before the first session of the afternoon, which is going to be looking at platform technology, a toolkit for the translation professionals, and that starts at 2 p.m. CET. And so at this point, the only thing left to do is to thank all of you who've been watching and for sending in and voting on those questions. And with that, I now bring this session to a close.